gratitude beforehand. And let's see. It's connecting. Mercury's in retrograde, so we have to be patient with technology today.
Yes. I've been feeling that the last few days as well.
Somebody said something, I said, just pray to Mercury. Mercury will help you. Just pray.
I've had mix-ups on times with clients and like all the communication things happening. So.
All right. I think we are live, but this is... All right, so we are live. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. And we talk about some simple Ayurveda tips. My name is Valerie McLaughlin, intuitive heart healer and spiritual guide. I help you to connect with your heart space so you can live a life full of love and gratitude. And today I have a very special guest. I have Angela here from Simple Ayurveda. Welcome, Angela. How are you today?
Hi, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. So I'm doing really well. Thank you.
You're welcome. Why don't you give us a little background of yourself and how you got into Ayurveda?
Okay, great. Well, I first learned about Ayurveda back in 2011 at a 200-hour yoga teacher training, which is how a lot of yogis first learned about Ayurveda since it's sister science. However, when I started to dabble into Ayurveda after that, I found myself super confused. I even went to an Ayurvedic practitioner and left there confused by what she told me, which can happen because Ayurveda is an art and a science, right? So part of it, there is a science to it with the elements and everything, but then part of it's an art and the relationship that you have with whoever you're talking about it with or teaching or learning from. Mm-hmm. So then I kind of put it on the back burner and put all my love into yoga for a long time. And then I started to get curious about Ayurveda again when I was teaching yoga, and I started to incorporate some basic Ayurveda themes into my classes around the seasons. And then I started working with an Ayurveda health counselor because when I was 21, I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis and primary sclerosing cholangitis, which is a rare liver autoimmune disorder. And over the years, they haven't given me too many problems, but I just have a very sensitive system and I have to be aware of foods. And I was taking prescription medications based on Western medicine and was doing okay, but I just felt like there was more, like the call was there, that there's this natural way to handle this and a natural way to live and not rely. And also when I was diagnosed with these conditions, when I was 21, my doctors told me that I would need a liver transplant within 10 years. And if you Google PSC, it's a grim report on the internet. It says like the life expectancy is 20 years, which I'm like approaching that soon. So, and they also told me I wouldn't be able to have kids, and I have 2 healthy kids. So you don't have to believe everything, which is one of the main reasons I love talking and sharing Ayurveda, is just to share that there's another way. So I started working with an Ayurveda health counselor, and then through my pregnancies, I had hypothyroidism and some other issues. So she was going to refer me to someone more experienced. And I finally just realized, rather than continuing on with someone else, I'm going to formally study myself to get to the bottom of all of these health issues. So I started studying through an Ayurveda health counselor program. and within just a few months was able to clear up a lot of symptoms, and I felt so much more energy, and there were so many byproducts aside from happier digestion that I didn't know were coming my way. Like, I at the time I had a 4-year-old and a baby, and I was, waking up with the sunrise naturally and having more energy and feeling happier, and all of those are the side effects of Ayurveda, just living a life more in sync with nature. So from there, I just got really excited and felt like it was my duty to share this magic that is basically free medicine. Because once we understand how nature works, so much of it is just simple little things that we can do in daily life. So that's how I ended up sharing Ayurveda and starting a podcast and all of that.
Wow, that is really truly amazing. And it is so amazing how our bodies are healers. We are our own powerful healers. That's one of the courses I like to teach, because we neglect to see that all the time. You were given something that was, as you said, rim, and have really taken that into a way of, how can I heal my body? And how can I choose to live a healthier life?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is too, I think it's really important. It's not that my life has been perfect since Ayurveda. And there have been times where my digestion has not been smooth. But the difference now for me is I know why. I can trace it back to something I did, to stress that I felt. And sometimes it's my control based on what I ate, or because I chose to stay up too late. And sometimes it's out of my control, like family stress or something like that. But at least I understand why, so I can make decisions to support in the moment.
Yeah, that's amazing. Is bad. So I thought that maybe this will help better.
Okay.
Who knows? So let's dive into Ayurveda. And what is the first thing that people usually ask you about Ayurveda?
Most people are curious about their doshas.
So what is a dosha?
So Ayurveda, everything is based off of nature. That's pretty cool. The word that we use to describe us, like the individual person, is our prakriti. And that same word is used to describe nature. So the same word describes both nature and your individual unique mind, body, soul configuration.
Wow.
So yeah, it's really cool. So we're based on the 5 elements, which are in Ayurveda. Of course, there are other systems that are based on elements, but in Ayurveda, the elements are earth, water, fire, wind or air, and then ether or space. So just emptiness. Mm-hmm. And then the 5 elements form together to create the 3 energies of the doshas. So that's what most people, when you start to become interested in Ayurveda, you'll learn about Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Vata energy is the wind and the empty space. And then Pitta is fire and water, and Kapha is earth and water. We all have all 3 within us. And they have different functions in the body. Like, for example, Pitta is closely related to our digestion, like transforming. It's the power of fire to transform things. Vata is like the circulation and the movement, sort of like you can imagine the wind or the prana moving through you. And then Kapha is stability. It's like the body being held together. So we have all 3. But from there, each one of us has our own unique way that those 3 manifested within us. So, for example, the person that has more Kapha than the other ones, the more Kapha than Pitta or Vata, will tend to be a more compact body type. So they'll have actual physical features that sort of mirror that Kapha-like quality, but then they'll also have personality features. Kapha personality is very stable, is structured, does well with routine and rhythm. And so therefore that person is very nurturing. When they're in balance, that type of person will generally be a little more nurturing, perhaps, because they have that stability and that patience. A Pitta person has a more medium build. They could be a little fiery. So the tendency might be inflammation in the body. And then also like that go get it things done sort of attitude. And then the Vata person has more wind and air. So that means that they're really open-minded. Their mind can just go to these places that maybe the rest of us don't quite go to. And then they can be, because Vata tends to be erratic, so they could be like really tall or really short. It's like the wind is just blowing in different ways. And so we have all three. So sometimes it's not so obvious which one is your most dominant. And it's also possible to have two that are sort of equally dominant with the third one. There are people that have all three equal, but that's very rare.
That's interesting. Does one of them like come forward more than the other? So let's say I was at Vata, and let's say that was me, but like at this moment, maybe another one is more forward than the other, or active in your body. I don't know how you say it.
Yes. There's so many layers to this. So just the understanding like that there's this basic makeup of the three and that's who you are is like part of it. And then, so that's called your Prakriti in Ayurveda. Then the other piece is your Vikriti. That's the state that you're in right now. So when you're using food or yoga or herbs, you're going to look at what's happening in your body right now. Now, there are sort of like, there's a lot of factors into what's going on in your body right now. For example, one super simple factor could be the season. So you could be a Vata person, but if it's summer and it's hot and you're outside a lot and you live in a place that's very busy, like the Jersey Shore, and there's just always people around, your Pitta can definitely be up. And so therefore, you might enjoy some cooling things like watermelon or cucumber or mint tea and things to calm that Pitta, even though that's not who you innately are. So there's the season or the weather. There's the phase of life. For example, childhood is considered the Kapha phase of life because you're building those muscles and those tissues and like how they kind of like walk all clunky and heavy and very earth-like. And then from puberty until menopause or menopause is the Pitta stage where you're like action oriented, you have a career, maybe you're taking care of family. And then the 50s on is the Vata stage of life where you're more into like being the wise person and sharing your knowledge and your energy with others, but in like a more sattvic kind of way, like a peaceful kind of way. So yeah, it's absolutely, there's your constitution and who you are, but then there's so many other factors that will affect how you feel in the moment or like which dosha is more prominent.
That's so interesting. There's like so many layers, and I have like all these questions like buzzing through my head, and I'm like, I don't know which way to go next. And it's like, oh, go like this because it's a lot of information. So let's start with a simple one. How can somebody find out what their dosha is?
That's actually not super simple because so the only way to 100% guarantee what your constitution is if an Ayurvedic doctor takes your pulse. Even that being said, I've had my pulse taken by 5 different people and 3 of them have said Pitta and 2 of them have said Vata.
Oh my goodness.
There are layers to the pulse. So there could be some mix up of what they're actually telling me that, for me, for example, I have a mostly Pitta constitution, but then Vata is always out of balance, which is the case for a lot of people that Vata is out of balance, just because Vata is so mobile. So of the 3 doshas, that's the one most likely to go out of balance in anyone. And then also because we live such Vata lifestyles, like traveling and connecting through the internet and sharing a lot of ideas. So it's just a lot of energy being circulated around. But you can still learn about yourself so that you can use this information. So in general, for example, I've been told in India, the doctors there won't even tell you what your constitution is. They'll only tell you what you need to work on. So when you're first learning about Ayurveda, you can do some dosha quizzes online. One of my teachers says you need to take at least 10 so you get the big picture, because nothing on paper is really going to give you the answer of who you are, as you know, as someone that works with people just want the quick answer. I wanted the quick answer, and there isn't really one, because there's so many layers to who you are as a person. And if you've been living out of alignment or living in balance for a very long time, it gets very fuzzy about what is actually you and what is that imbalance. So when you're first starting out in Ayurveda, you could basically just work with what's happening in your body in the moment. The main principle is like attracts like, and opposites create balance. So with that example of summer, that it's hot outside, I mean, our bodies just naturally want to eat watermelon. We don't, usually want to eat something that's like going to create more heat in the body. So you can just moment to moment. And more common even than the temperature thing is this opposite quality of static and mobile. Like, is my mind hopping all over the place? Do I feel really anxious? So then stillness would be the choice, whether that's meditation or yin yoga or a heart healing or something where we're not moving around a lot. And then on the opposite end, if you've been sort of like lethargic for a while and just staying in bed and it's like time to get going, then you choose the opposite quality and do something to like stimulate and get the blood flowing.
So not a simple question.
No, yeah. So
it was actually going to lead into the other question when you kind of answered it about like what one's out of balance or which one that you have to work on.
Yeah, you're going to work on what's happening now. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes that might match, but not always. But once you sort of start working with it and you really want to, you can get a consultation and have someone assess you, because they'll look at your different body parts, the shape of your eyes, the texture of your hair, like how broad the shoulders are and things like that, as well as like what the common symptoms are. If you like chronically have the same sort of symptoms over a lifetime, that's going to be a pretty big hint on what your constitution is. It's very hard to do a self-assessment though, just because it's very hard to be totally objective and decide like, do I have round eyes or do I have squinty eyes? But yeah, you can do quizzes. And I have a whole video lesson that'll like walk you through all the different things you could look at in yourself. So that's like one way you can do it. It's usually a process though, although some people it can be pretty obvious.
Yeah, it's like when you do a reading, you can do self readings on yourself, but sometimes you need that outside person to read for you, because you got to take out your own perspective of things. Like, oh, I'm going to read into this card what it means to me, but sometimes somebody else can lend you something else. And that sounds like the same thing. Like, you look at yourself, yeah, I'm not like this. And somebody goes, oh yeah, you're sure like that. And you're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, like for example, there is a really great book that really helps with the doshas. It's called Healing Your Life by Dr. Mark Halpern. And in that one, it talks about like how one of the characteristics of Pitta is perfectionism. And for me, I was like, oh, because when you first learn about Pitta, a lot of things will say that Pittas are athletic. And I never counted myself as an athlete, and I was horrible at sports when I was younger, like forced to do them in gym and things like that, got hit in the head with the volleyball. So I'm like, well, how can I be a Pitta if I'm not naturally good at sports? But my eating was so out of balance because I lived like a typical American lifestyle growing up, like fast food and my parent canned vegetables and things like that, that my body was heavier than what it is now. And just I didn't have good coordination or anything like that. And so there was a big imbalance there, kind of like hiding a little. So now in my late 30s, I'm like better at sports I'm interested in, like stuff like stand-up paddle or yoga or things like that than I was when I was younger. So yeah, you can have imbalance, like fogging things so much that you can't see it. But then also, it's almost like these doshas get turned into archetypes. It's like, oh, the perfect Pitta would be an athlete. So I sort of imagined, but that quality of having fire can show up in people in different ways. Mm-hmm. Just like the qualities of Vata, to say that to be open-minded or creative could show up in so many different ways. It could show up as being intuitive and reading cards, or it could show up totally different, like a graphic designer.
Yet there's so many different options for us. So when one of them is imbalanced, does it affects our physical body, right?
Yeah. So the physical body has like two main things that we work with in Ayurveda. There's more, but the main things that are like the screaming, blaring, obvious things are when there's doshic imbalance, and then Agni, which is the digestive fire, which is responsible for so much. So with the doshas, usually Vata is always out of balance when there's some sort of serious illness. So for example, a very minor illness where Vata might not be involved is, let's say there's a kapha person. So the kapha person sort of holds on to nutrients very easily. They can have a little extra water or mucus because they have a lot of that water element. So if they have maybe like an extra runny nose or a wet cough in the winter, that could just be like too much kapha gathered up. Those kind of instances are sort of far and few between, because usually when there's illness, Vata is involved somehow, because Vata is that rhythmic flow of prana through the body. And whenever there's illness, usually there's erratic prana in the body. And so the first step is sort of like to smooth things within a daily rhythm and with things that reduce stress, like yoga and meditation, or reducing tasks load and things like that.
Awesome. And the other part, you said it was two. One is
Yeah, so that's the first part. Usually it involves calming Vata, which is how Ayurveda is holistic, because it's not just go and take herbs or eat this food, because if we don't take away the stress that's causing the disease, the other things are sort of just like, they support the body, but they end up being band-aids. And then the other piece is the digestive system. So Agni is the word for the digestive fire, and Agni transforms everything that we take in. So our food, the things that we read, the conversations that we have, like it all gets transformed and turned into consciousness. And when Agni is not functioning properly, it's not able to do its job properly. So this is that gut-mind connection. This is where we could be eating like really healthy food that we think is good for us, but like our body's not responding the way, or we have rash or eczema or arthritis or all these things that somehow the food is being turned into toxins in our body. And then Agni is also responsible for our energy levels and having brain fog, which, you know, even Western science backs this up. When the gut's not functioning properly, there's brain fog.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned something about the daily rhythm. And that's something I wanted to talk on, because when we had a conversation, we were talking about the daily rhythm and how it's important. So what do you mean by daily rhythm, and how is it important to Ayurveda? And actually, how important to you as a human?
Yeah, this was like so life-changing to understand this concept. Basically, when we think about how the human experience mirrors what's happening in nature, like we're a part of nature, it's like the sun is going to rise and the sun's going to set whether we acknowledge that's happening or not. So if we stay in our house and we have the lights on all night long and the computer is buzzing and TV, and we stay up till 5 a.m, like it's still dark outside, whether we hone in and tap into that energy or not. And so the more that we sync up with the circadian rhythm, another thing that Western science is starting to back up, the more that our bodies are in sync with what's naturally happening in nature, then the smoother and easier daily life is. So basically, Ayurveda teaches that it's ideal that we're all up by 6 a.m. or by sunrise. Now that can have varying perspectives based on where you live, because obviously the texts were written in ancient times in India, where everyone was up at sunrise. So it depends. If you live in a place that's like very dark, you might sleep till 7 or something in the winter. That's possible. But the basic idea is that you're waking up at the same time every morning, and you're going to bed at a similar time every night. And then the meals are eaten at the same times every day. So for me personally, I have a daily rhythm. So I don't call it a schedule because I'm not super strict. It's not like lunch has to be at 12 noon on the dot. I give myself a window of between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. So I know that sometimes when creatives are freelancing or working from home, you can get really like into a project, and then all of a sudden it's like 3 o'clock and I forgot to eat. Yeah, exactly. And so for me personally, like I don't take clients, I don't schedule things from 12 to 1. And I give myself the time to cook lunch and eat it and clean it up. And I give myself a real lunch break, even though I am working from home. And I usually eat breakfast personally between 7 and 8. It doesn't have to be that exact window. You can look at your own schedule and see, but the idea is that it's not 7 o'clock one day, 10 a.m. the next day, 11:30, forgot to eat breakfast on the fourth day, went back to 7 a.m. Because then the vata dosha, that rhythmic prana that's flowing through the body that we want to be systemic and like easeful, is sort of like all over the place. And also for supporting Agni, our body, when we have a daily rhythm and when we eat at certain time zones each day, it knows food is coming. So it allows the nervous system to rest because it's not in this fight or flight panic mode of when am I going to get to eat again. It knows, okay, lunch is every day at 12:30. And then at 12, when you start preparing the food, the mouth starts secreting digestive enzymes, so that it's like you're creating the perfect storm for the digestive system. It's just giving it all the possible building blocks for it to do its job successfully. So that's the daily rhythm. And like I said, when I first got really serious about Ayurveda, my daughter was a baby and my son was 4. So it would be very easy to sort of have like a chaotic day and not follow this. But I stuck with the food, and it just made such a huge difference. And also I used to think that I needed snacks. It's ideal for Agni not to be snacking all day, because basically once you start eating food, it's being broken down in through the digestive process. And then if you eat a snack an hour later, you have some food sitting in the stomach in one part of the process, and all the energy is there breaking it down. And then when you eat something an hour later, now the energy is like going over to that new stuff, but the old stuff isn't fully passed through to the next stage yet. So your energy is dispersed. So it can't really function as well. And also, now you end up with food in the stomach that's at different stages of digestion, that's sort of just like brewing in there. And depending what it is, it can cause fermentation or cause issues.
And along with the eating daily rhythm, you also teach that have a daily rhythm and like yoga or meditation also, correct?
Yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, it would work out energetically to practice yoga and pranayama at the same time every day. Now, I admit I don't do that right now at this phase in life with the small kids, and especially with COVID. Although everything can be falling apart and we still have our meals at the set time. That's one non-negotiable around here, because I need my digestive system functioning. But so yeah, the ancient texts have a super long protocols about suggestions. And basically they suggest that we wake up and we have a whole morning routine where we do all of that stuff before 6 a.m. And then at 6 a.m., like we go and start our work for the day. So in modern times, really super dedicated Ayurveda practitioners would wake up at 5 perhaps and like do their whole routine and do a short yoga session or meditation session or something like that in the morning before going out. But what I do, I look at like what the recommendations are, and I just try to pull out the most important nugget that I can actually work with it for my real life. And so what I take from it is tongue scraping. So if you don't have a tongue scraper, Everyone needs a tongue scraper. They're like $5 from the health food store. Scrape your tongue before you eat or drink anything. And that is because at night, your digestive system is processing everything you ate from the day, and whatever it doesn't need partially is coming back up onto your tongue as ama, as toxins. So scrape it out and get rid of it so that you don't drink it back in. So yeah, tongue scraping is also a non-negotiable for me. But you know, one of the basic ideas, if to boil it down, is that you nurture yourself before you go out and engage with the world. So at the very minimum, to not have my phone in my bedroom and to wake up and like scrape my tongue and brush my teeth and wash my face and maybe meditate for 5 minutes before I go out and face the family would be like, you know, it's just like sort of like gathering that energy in before interacting in some way. And everyone has their own level of what they're able or willing to commit to. And a big part of it too is what time you have to be to work and things like that. I mean, I have a client right now that has to be at work at 6 a.m. So to practice yoga before work would be pretty intense.
I'm laughing partly because that's kind of what happened to me today. I've been getting up, and I've started a walking practice, because to me that's like my yoga is walking. I enjoy it, and especially living here in Atlantic City on the beach, it's nice to get outside where I'm walking. And this morning I woke up earlier than usual, and I'm in this rhythm now that I wake up without even my alarm. Just, you know, it's being earlier because the sun's coming, you know, it's like I'm not earlier than doing this morning. Because I woke up earlier, I said, okay, before I walk, I start like, then I'm out walking later than I normally do because I start my practice. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. I just took my headphones out because I thought maybe, I don't know.
It might have been me.
Okay.
So what part did you miss that I have to go over again?
I know. I got that you have your walking practice and then it started getting really fuzzy.
Yeah. So this morning I woke up earlier than I have been. And instead of getting up and following my daily routine, I started to answer emails that I saw that came through. And it's like the next thing you know, I'm out walking. It's, yeah. Something's going on. Let me try. How about now? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Something's going on with my speaker today. I'm not sure what my microphone, either my computer microphone or the one I had plugged in. So I apologize for that. Long story short, I broke my daily rhythm today. Because I was up early and I got on the computer and started looking at emails instead of getting in my normal practice. But the other side of it is not to be hard on yourself when you do it.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely guilty of it. So I think I've talked about this with others too. I feel like you do something once, then okay, yeah, forget it, free pass. Maybe twice. Once I do something 3 days in a row, it's now become a new habit that needs to be broken.
Yeah. And it's like when I talk to people, I'm like, you go to the gym and you're like, I'm going to go work out for an hour. And like, that's your thing. I'm work out for an hour. But let's say one day something happens and you don't get out of the house and all you have is a half hour. Most people are like, oh, well, now I can't do it. And they start beating themselves up. But you can still have that half hour. You still have that opportunity. So it's important to like also see that, like, don't beat yourself up, because that's not doing you any good. Giving you stress too, because now you're out of practice. It's just going with it and allowing the flow to happen the way it's going to happen.
Yes. And I only have a half hour, so that's why bother is can be very a pizza look, right? Because if it's not perfect, I'm not doing it. Personally, I had to let go of all of that when I had my son. He's 7, and I had a very strong yoga practice of like at least an hour a day. I used to go to class like 5 days a week, all the way. Actually, went to class an hour and a half vinyasa class the day I went into labor with him. So I was like just like loved yoga, not because I felt like I had to go for like a workout, just I loved it. So when he was born, I had all these fantasies of like mommy and me yoga and going to class, and I took him a couple times, and basically I would just sit on my mat and breastfeed him the whole time. Like he wasn't having it. So I just learned like 10 minutes in the morning or 5 minutes in the kitchen. It all adds up. And even now I'll take them to the playground and literally do yoga while they're playing. And then I'll sit on the bench for Shavasana or something.
And that's the beauty of it, is finding the opportunities within your daily schedule.
Yeah, that's why I don't like to get too hung up on even teaching or super emphasizing like all the things that ancient texts would suggest to do in the morning, because with modern life, it's like, yeah, some people might be there, but I'm not. And yet I was able to use it to feel well. I was still able to use Ayurveda to feel well. And I still have energy and wake up with the sun naturally, even though I don't do all of those things on the list. And so to look at the list and say, which ones do I personally need? You know, for example, I know a lot of people have heard of or maybe use the neti pot, which is the nose cleansing. I have one. I've done it for a month straight because of, when I went to a Ayurveda program, and I really don't like it. And I don't tend to have a lot of sinus issues. So I just have it. And if I were to start to feel like I were getting sick or something, I might use it. But I've made peace that I don't need that for my daily life. Now, if someone was a kapha person and had a lot of sinus issues, I would say, you should probably try it out and make friends with it. So it's like we all have the areas that we really have to give, or not that we have to, but like when we choose to give them more attention and awareness, that's going to impact us in so many beneficial ways. And then there's the things that, if it causes a lot of like doubt and shame if you don't do it, and causes more stress than what it alleviates, then just let it go, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. If it causes you more stress and discomfort, then let it go, because that's the whole opposite of what you're trying to do.
Yes. I mean, I've done a lot of meditation challenges over the days where like the timer with the meditation is like giving me so much anxiety. And I'm like, okay, is it done yet? Is it done yet? I'm like, okay, this is really, yeah.
I gotta put the timer on sometimes because I just go into meditation and I don't come out. But then I have the other days where I'm like, wait, it's not been 5 minutes yet?
Yeah, there's that fine line between self-discipline and like keeping at it, and then like turning it into something rigid.
Yeah. So I think we have to talk about food, because I think we can't talk about Ayurveda without talking about food, because that's a big part of it, right?
Yeah, it's huge.
So what are the, let's say, the important food options to follow or practices to follow, so not to kind of overwhelm everybody with all the options out there?
I think from my experience of working with people, there are two main things to look at. First of all, noticing when you eat something, how you feel, really, because that's all Ayurveda is. It's helping you to see cause and effect. I don't use food lists at all. I don't give food lists to anybody. The food lists are there to sort of like give you an idea, but they're not set in stone, and they don't always match up, because sometimes it's the practitioner's viewpoint of what they think would be balancing for this person or this type of condition. And so, yeah, they don't always match up. So just kind of a big part of it goes back to those opposite qualities we were talking about. So basically, if you think about like attracts like and opposites create balance, if you have a lot of fire, which you don't have to know what your constitution is, you can just think to yourself, like, am I getting aggravated really easy? Is my face getting red? Like, do I feel inflamed? And the symptoms of the body it'll be redness. Fire is red. The eyes will be red. There'll be red things happening and rashes and acne and all of that. So redness and inflammation. So then you can sort of look at, am I maybe toning down the spiciness? So that's when it's not that, really spicy food is good or bad. It's just, it creates heat in the body. And if you already have heat, then toning it down and eating more simple foods will be helpful. And that is the main thing. One of the main things I did for healing colitis inflammation, which is basically redness in the colon and irritation, is eating like super simple food. So specifically, Ayurveda loves basmati rice because it's easy to digest. So it's not that there's any kind of problem with brown rice or things that are more fibrous. It's just that if your digestive system isn't functioning well, giving it harder to digest things doesn't really get you anywhere, because it's and so this is sort of like the opposite of what some modern medical stuff does. Is like, if someone's constipated, they'll suggest fiber. But the thing is, if basically things are stuck in there, we need things that are going to go in and out easier rather than so it's all about digestion, and it's all about what you digest. And so this is when it comes to Ayurveda, for anyone that has difficulty with digestion, which difficulty with digestion shows up in so many different ways. There's so many symptoms that are connected to digestion that we just don't, like bags under the eyes, brain fog, not waking up with energy in the morning. If you have food in your stool, it didn't digest, that's digestion issue, gas, reflux, constipation, diarrhea, loose elimination, all of that is all related to how well Agni is functioning. And so if any of that seems like a symptom that anyone listening has, then the idea is to eat simple and allow the digestive system to rest, and to eat foods that are cooked and moist. So I, especially if I'm in a period where I need to like get back on track and feel super nourished, I follow a simple rice bowl of 4 parts to it. Rice or another grain, a legume or a bean. And if you're not vegetarian, you could use an easy to digest meat there, like fish or chicken. And then 2 vegetables, a grounding vegetable. So something that's going to help create that earth energy and stability. So basically anything that grows under the ground or that's sort of dense. And this is where you don't need a food list. You just start to tune into what is the quality of the food. So for example, an avocado is dense. Sweet potatoes, squashes, parsnips, turnips, like all beets, all of that stuff is grounding. So one of those for every lunch and dinner, and carrots also are like common, easy one to throw in there. And then 1 green or cruciferous vegetable. So something that's detoxing for the body, like broccoli or cabbage or chard or all of that stuff, spinach. So basically those 4 components, that's a really easy healing way to eat for a time period. Like I ate like that for 3 months.
Wow.
And even now I mostly eat like that. I've come to love it because there's so many different variations that you can do on the bowl. You can have it Mexican style, you can have it Thai style, Indian style. So it's not that all Ayurvedic food is Indian food. So what happens oftentimes for those of us that are doing our best to eat healthy is, I know I used to eat a salad every day for lunch, but a salad is actually pretty hard to digest. And so if you still have particles in your stool, then it didn't digest, or if it goes through very quick or anything like that. Those are like all clues that the body's not digesting it. So for a super simple Ayurvedic hack, like I'll have people just throw the salad in a pan with a little bit of water and cover it and like cook it for 3 minutes and then put it on the back on the plate. And it just sort of like creates that heat. It gives Agni a little boost. It's like, it almost like, yeah, it like pre-chews it for us. It breaks it down a little bit so that there's not as much energy on our part needed to break it down.
I love it. You know, I listen to my body, and people are sometimes surprised because I eat plant-based and are like, oh, you want a salad? I'm like, no, actually I don't. And they're like, what? I'm like, salad is my every once in a while thing. It's not something that I like go to. I notice now, because it's getting warmer, that I do want it more often than I didn't. Like in the wintertime, I don't. But I tend to like my vegetables cooked more because they're easier for me to digest. And it's just something intuitively I just picked up of listening to my body. Even the whole rice thing. People are like, oh, you eat brown rice? I'm like, no, I eat white rice. And they're like, what? And I'm like, it's easier for me to digest. Like I feel it in my body, where like if I eat the brown rice, I can feel it like still hanging on, and sometimes my stomach not feeling so good when I eat it. So it's that to me is the big key, is really listening to your body. And I like what you said, your bowl that you make up. As you're sitting there doing it, in my head, I'm going, okay, she eats rice, she eats this, and I'm, even though I don't do it, I'm thinking, okay, it's plain rice, plain this, and then you're like, oh, you can make it Mexican stuff. And that's what people I think forget, is that you can actually season your food. It doesn't have to be plain.
Yeah, or like, for example, like I think we have Mexican night here once a week because my kids eat it. So like, doing it this way, like if you make rice and black beans, and then I'll make a cabbage slaw, but basically I'll just cook it instead of eating it raw. Like I'll just shred the cabbage, throw it in a pan with water and cilantro and lime juice and soften it. And then I make guacamole. So that's like your dense vegetable is the avocado, or if I'm feeling, extra jazzy, then I'll throw in some zucchini too, or some other cooked thing. And then the cabbage slaw. But then I try to like stay away from the tortilla chips and stuff just because of my digestion. But if you don't have issues with it, then yeah, you could like throw it all in a taco shell, or for my kids, I'll make them like a quesadilla to go with it or something. So even if like you're the one that's trying to eat this way, but you have other people that you have to cook for, they could still eat the base, right? Chickpeas are like I love chickpeas personally, and they're just so versatile and there's so much you can do with them. So I like to eat chickpeas.
I love chickpeas. It's like, I could just open the can and like throw it. Like, it was like this weird, the other day I was like, looked in my refrigerator and I was like, oh, I need to go grocery shopping. But I had butternut squash still, and I had red cabbage. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to put this together. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to cook the cabbage. I had already cooked the butternut squash and I just needed to heat it up. And I'm like, I'm going to throw chickpeas in it.
Yeah, so you basically had the bowl minus the rice. And I keep polenta in my cabinet because polenta is like a grain that cooks super fast. So that would be like my, you could take that whole thing and just put it on some polenta, and there you go. You have like the 4 components, like very easy and simple.
Yeah.
But it's amazing how like you're already practicing so many parts of an Ayurvedic diet without even putting too much thinking in, because it is just intuitive. Like once I learned the system, it's just like, and my digestive system feels so much better. Like I don't want to go back to a different way of eating.
I agree. That was my, the biggest thing with me. I gave up gluten and dairy years ago, like 8-9 years ago. And people are like, how can you do that? And I'm like, because when I eat it, it makes me feel horrible. I said, no, I don't want to feel horrible. And that was before I even started to get into the healing and all that. And I'm like, it was just a subconscious thing. Like, I don't want to feel horrible, so I don't do it. I stopped drinking. And they're like, why? I'm like, because I don't want to feel horrible the next day. Like, I want to be waking up feeling energized. And that's not how it is when I do those things. So I just intuitively started to give up things because I didn't like the way it felt in my body. And it's easy for me not to eat them because I don't like the way it feels in my body. And finding other things that brings me that happiness and joy, because food has to be pleasure. Like And then you get creative with when you cook, because it has to be, you have to have pleasure from it. You have to enjoy it.
Yeah. And I think it's really cool too. And I'm sure you've experienced this as well. It's like when your taste buds adapt, that butternut squash and cabbage tasted amazing because the taste buds aren't like all burnt out from being used to super intense fake flavors.
It did. It was really amazing. And that's the fun part of it, is being creative. And that's another part that, like, you can express your creativity, that other part of you, into what you're cooking. And sometimes I think that gets lost with people. They're like, oh, I don't know what to do. I don't know, like, but like, be creative. Like, you never know. Just open up your. Yeah.
I know sometimes people will ask me for recipes or things like that, but I have a couple cookbooks, but I don't even really use them. I'll just glance maybe for inspiration, but I use this formula of the 4 parts, and from there I'm just like throw it all together and it always tastes good. And so another thing that's really fun to play with is just the textures of like how big you cut the vegetables, or the size or the shape, or things like that make a veggie bowl like more exciting. And I love fresh herbs, and I like to make any kind of sauce, like throwing it in the blender, like cilantro or tahini and lemon juice and all of. So veggie bowls need a great sauce.
That's a good point. And it's really, it's not as challenging as people think to make something. Like, I haven't bought salad dressing in I don't know how many years, because I am allergic. I can't eat garlic. My system does not like it at all, in so many different ways. And people are like, well, what do you put on your dressing? I'm like, it's so easy to make something. It doesn't take that long, and you can change it up.
Yeah, I don't buy a dress, and it kind of grosses me out actually. Bottled dressing, like once you make fresh, and it, at the very least, well, I'm not really eating salad, but if I'm making cooked veggies, I'll just like put olive oil on top of it or something like that. And for anyone that, if vata is sort of all over the place, like oils are really nice for vata. Kaphas could have a little less, just because if they're holding on to the nutrients, they don't need as much. They could still use a little though. But so yeah, I always drizzle stuff on top.
Yeah. Is there any final thoughts or tips that we should know before we
I think that just paying attention to how you feel with Ayurveda, because it's all about connecting with nature and connecting to the present moment, and just like tapping into your own intuition, like you said, just realizing which foods make you feel well, and sort of understanding why, because they digest easier, or why, because they're grounding and I have a lot of spacey energy or things like that. And the more that we tap into that and start to make connections, then the easier it is to make like the next decision based on what would be beneficial.
And I will add this, it's not always just in that moment. Sometimes it's the next day. Like, how do you feel the next day after you ate something? So if the next day you're feeling like groggy, or, your stomach's not feeling well, that could have been related to what you had the day before.
Yeah, there's been times like I feel like I'm most tempted in a health food store to buy junk food because it's organic. Like if I go to like the regular grocery store, I'm not really that tempted by like Doritos or something. I'm grossed out actually. But if I go and see like some organic kettle chips, forget it. I want to eat the whole bag. So yeah, when I'm shopping in a health food store, I just want to buy all the organic junk food. But then I'll think to myself like, oh, if I eat this, I'm going to be so bloated. I'm not going to feel well tomorrow. And there's all like, I want to do these fun things tomorrow. I don't want to feel like that. So that like reminds me to just let it go and to not be so tempted, because I think about, yeah, how do I want to feel later? Do I want to be like laying around bloated?
Yeah, that's a good one. How do you want to feel later? Before you put something in the mouth, think about it. How do you want to feel later?
It's a direct correlation. I mean, eating is something we do so often. So it's like one of the biggest things that we have control over our own health.
Is that moment right now of pleasure gonna feel the same 2 hours from now? And what are you gonna feel?
And it's funny that you said that word pleasure, because I was thinking about how the first few bites are usually have pleasure, but then like halfway through the bag, the pleasure's gone and now it's turned into mindlessness. So, with Ayurveda, you don't have to be like super rigid, and you can have things once in a while if your body tolerates it. But then the point would be to enjoy that bite, be mindful, be in the present moment, eat the chocolate cake, and savor each bite, and maybe you'll notice that you're full halfway through rather than just like eating the other half not thinking.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I actually really enjoyed this conversation. I learned a lot, and I learned a lot about myself just by having this conversation. So thank you so much. Before we go, I do have your information, but how can people get in touch with you?
I'm on simpleayurveda.com is the website. And then for more chats just about Ayurveda and general life, I have the Simple Ayurveda podcast, and I'm pretty active on Instagram.
Awesome. So I'm going to make sure that I tag your Instagram and link your podcast into the show notes. I did put your Facebook group and also your website in there, but I will add your Instagram and your podcast so people can go and take a look at you and listen to you there. Thank you for joining me. I'm so happy to have you here, and I look forward to chatting with you again and maybe going a little bit deeper into Ayurveda.
Yeah, anytime. Thank you so much, Valerie.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.